Welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. This is episode 1 titled MeToo. My name is Melissa Durrell and I'm your host, inspiring, uniting, and leading the change and the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Is this the pivotal moment we have been waiting for in women's history? Is this MeToo hashtag the catalyst for real change? In all the circles I run in, this has been the dominant topic. And we're joined today by Aimée Morrison. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Professor of English at the University of Waterloo, focused on new media studies and digital humanities. But Aimée, I know you as a disruptor, and you gained national attention pointing out inequalities across many platforms for women, which I think rocks. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's jump into this right away. What was your initial reaction to the MeToo hashtag?
My initial reaction, I guess, was sadness because I encountered it on my personal Facebook page where, I saw one post and I'm just sort of scrolling through my phone and I was like, oh, what's this? And then it was another one and another one and another one. And pretty much my entire Facebook newsfeed was women and some men that I knew using this hashtag with the cut and paste text saying if we all did it, everyone would then know the extent of sexual violence. And it was just really, it's something intellectually that I knew, right? That sexual violence is pervasive. And I knew, of course, that it happened in my own life. And I guess I knew intellectually it had happened to probably most of the people I knew. But to sort of see these kind of like confessional statements over and over and over and over and over was just emotionally overwhelming, actually.
What was interesting for me is it started with copying and pasting.
Yeah.
Alyssa Milano's original, like, who's the boss?
Yeah.
Taking charge, screw you, Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
But then it became, as you said, a confessional, which was heart-wrenching, but also it felt so vulnerable on social media.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the original text being repeated, and in Milano's tweet too, she's got an image in there where she shows it and says, from a friend. So even she is not claiming that she wrote that text herself, right? But she's sharing it, and then we all began to share it. And then you're right, as the sort of day rolled into the evening on Sunday, you could see people were appending their own like actual stories of harassment or assault, and then so if things started off all looking exactly the same and there was a power in that, but then they became really individual and there was really an emotional power in that. And then even within all of those individual statements, you begin to see recurring patterns, especially of women saying like, I don't know if this really counts, but I was in the library and a man showed me his penis and I was 10 years old. Does that count? Yeah, honey, you know what? That counts, right?
Yeah.
But how astonishing to discover the things that had happened to women that they just sort of shrugged off and thought, well, I don't think that counts. It wasn't that bad, right? It's pretty bad.
Changed the definition too about, what is sexual harassment and what's sexual assault, and just really shining a light on that rape culture that we have here.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I was talking to the girls that I work with, and one of them was in line at a bar and it was raining out on the weekend. And a friend of hers was 2 in front of her, and he handed her the umbrella over top of another group because she was stuck in line. And some guy yells out, "Oh, what do you have to do to did you have to give him a blowjob for that?" And she stood there and, in this huge line of people waiting for cabs. But it just shows you, and she told us the story. I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And part of it's part of our culture now.
Yeah.
For a joke. Who thinks that's funny?
I don't think it's funny either.
No, and we shouldn't be thinking it's funny anymore. No. And do you think that this is going to help? Do you think people are going to change the way that they speak and talk because of the hashtag?
I think, it's not the first hashtag, and it won't be the last, because if a hashtag could actually change culture would be changed. I think these things are additive and they happen little by little. So this tag follows along from Yes All Women, and it follows along from Been Raped, Never Reported, which are sort of similar hashtags that moved in waves where women and queer people and non-binary people were expressing things that had happened to them, right, in ways that in culture, we mostly don't have spaces to do informally, right? So you go to the police and they're like, well, I don't think there's enough here to press charges. Or you go to your boss and your boss is like, if it's better if, maybe if you just sit at opposite ends, or like, but he's such a high performer, right? So the formal structures have never really allowed women to disclose, right? And the whisper networks, which I'm sure you know about in every sort of professional group, so you've worked in,
right?
Yeah, you don't mention it, but like maybe in the bathroom sometimes you're like, stay away from that guy, right? So, like it was quite famous about Jian Ghomeshi, and we're hearing about Weinstein as well, that everybody sort of knew, but nobody could really say. And I think these informal internet media really give us an opportunity to stand up in much more public way, right? And say, me too, and not have some man say, could you just maybe not say that right now, right? So, and that platform is really quite large, and it really draws lots and lots of people into it. And as we discover that other women have had the same experiences and feel the same way, we start to feel less ashamed of the things that have happened to us. We start to imagine them less as being things that we did wrong, right? Character flaws on our part, right? Yeah, I was wearing the wrong thing, or maybe I misunderstood, or he's really actually a nice guy. What was I thinking, right? And when all these other women have the same experience, you start to think like, hey, maybe I'm not crazy, right? Maybe he was the problem the whole time. And I think that's the most powerful thing right now, is that women are starting to understand their experiences not as personal, but as structural.
So you said that there's been hashtags before, but have any ever reached this kind of I was looking at some of the numbers, 4.7 million people engaged with MeToo posts in less than 24 hours, over 12 million posts, comments, reactions. Those numbers are growing. It's been trending for the last week. CNN was reporting that 45% of US Facebook users are friends with someone who posted MeToo. That's almost 50%.
That's incredible. So I think, just to put my like social media researcher hat on for a minute, I will say that the virality of this particular post was amplified by the fact that it begins from a very high profile news item, right? So Harvey Weinstein, that's already in the news. We have Rose McGowan, who got a lot of attention last week and then was banned from Twitter. And when someone gets banned from Twitter, it's always like a big deal, and everybody kind of piles on to find out what happened. Alyssa Milano has a ton of followers, right? And then a whole bunch of Hollywood celebrities also, who follow her, then tweeted the same thing. So what you have is people at the top of the social media food chain starting a hashtag, right? People who are followed by a lot of women starting this hashtag. And so it didn't just come from one place then, right? It came from followers of Lady Gaga and followers of Alyssa Milano and like followers of Mayim Bialik, right? Like, so it's Big Bang Theory people mixed in with like Charmed people mixed in like with, so it starts at the very top of the internet food chain, and there's came down really fast. And then the Me Too hashtag itself is very accessible in a way that something like the hashtag been raped, never reported is a bit more extreme, right? And that also, even if someone would be covered by that particular tag, to make that big of a disclosure is much more risky, than a kind of Me Too that says I've been subject to some sort of harassment or some sort of like aggressive gender-based behavior, right? So I think that the hashtag was both more open to participation, where you didn't have to disclose something really awful or anything at all if you didn't want to, and it spread so fast because such big people were tweeting it right at the beginning.
That's right. I loved a quote. You talked about some of the people at the top of the food chain, but the Guardian reporter Nadia Kamani, she said today, the story moved beyond any one man. It became a conversation about men's behavior towards women and the imbalance of power. And I just thought that's so interesting. And one of the things we talked about before was like, is this the next wave of feminism that we've been waiting for? What do you think?
I think that imbalance of power is really crucial here. So some people who've been writing about the Weinstein thing, so critiquing, for example, Mayim Bialik, saying like, I dress modestly and I don't flirt. Sort of assuming that sexual harassment and sexual assault is about sexual attraction, and it's mostly not. It's mostly about power, right? It's mostly about someone who has power asserting dominance over someone who doesn't, or sometimes someone who feels powerless in the wider realm of their own life, being able to feel powerful by scaring a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so mostly where you see a lot of harassment, endemic harassment, is in industries where most of the men are the ones who are in charge of giving out jobs or determining salaries or offering projects, and where most of the women are very junior in the profession, right? So this is why so many of the women using the MeToo hashtag are talking about men exposing themselves to them when these women were children, right? So like there's always this asymmetry of power. It's never someone with less power being aggressive against someone with more. And when we have our whole system is still set up as a patriarchy, where most industries, it's mostly men who are in charge, and most of the junior people are women. It's going to make sexual violence and sexual harassment much more likely and much less likely to be reported.
Mm-hmm. But so then how do we take it to that next level then? Because, maybe it has become mainstream. Like Me Too is totally mainstream right now, but it's still many of us women having this conversation. And as you said, until, these older men are actually reading these things and actually realizing there's something wrong here. How do we go to that next level?
Well, I think it sort of starts personal, right? So there are a lot of men who are kind of expressing surprise. They're like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, why would you, right? Why would you? So
I always said that.
I know. So you're not thinking of where you're going to park your car now, because when you come out of the building, it's going to be dark, right? That's not something you think about. You don't think about your accessibility to the bus route. You don't think about it's going to be late, I'm going to have to take a taxi. You don't think about, I'm going to be at that meeting all by myself, right? And they just don't think about it. So the more that women can feel empowered, even to say to the men in their lives, this is the way I think, right? This is the way I have to think. This is the way I have to protect myself moving through the world. Like I remember being out in public with my husband, who and getting catcalled by somebody who was kind of aggressively complimentary. And I was like, right? Just because if you just acknowledge them, then usually they go away. And he's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, because believe me when I say it's easier, right? Don't turn around and yell at them, because now I'm scared. Maybe I'm going to get, killed or yelled at or spit on or something, right? And so him moving through the world with me, or me sort of saying this happened to me at work today, and he believes me, right? Which a lot of women don't have the benefit of men actually believing them when they say that guy is really creepy. I feel like he was talking to my boobs the whole time, because men have a tendency to say well, I didn't see that, right? He doesn't talk to my boobs. Well, that's because you're a dude, right? So if exposure to these hashtags, has men going maybe that does happen a lot, right?
This hashtag is don't talk to my boobs, talk to my eyes.
Yeah. Eyes are up here, right? But until men can start to look at the world the way that women experience it, I don't think they're going to take it seriously. And so hashtags like this really, I think, help some men sort of be convinced by this overwhelming numerical spread of things like pretty much every woman has seen some dude's penis that she didn't want to see, right? Just in the world, or had the hey baby out of a car, or had a boss who was a little handsy. We've all had that. And for such a long time, many men didn't want to believe that was true. But when you have these hundreds of thousands of women saying yeah, me too, right? I think maybe they start to see it. That's step one.
I remember when I was younger, they used to put glasses on you, and it was this is what it'd be like if you had 4 beers, and it's almost like we need to find these goggles for men, they're
that's right,
goggles, but they're Me Too goggles, and actually so they can see the world through our eyes. Wouldn't that be fascinating?
Wouldn't that be a great Google Glass project, an augmented reality project, where you'd put the glasses on and it would do threat assessments, you were a girl, creepy dude, cross the street, I'm not going to get too close to that car. Right? If it'd be don't park here, that's not safe. That would be, and it would be so distracting. How many brain cycles have you and I wasted in our lives, doing this, right? Am I safe here? Oh, please don't talk to me. Pick up a book so this guy's not going to talk to me, right? And men don't have to deal with that at all. It's just, right?
So I want to talk to you a little bit more about, because you're the online genius. And so, so some of men have interacted online. They've started using hashtags I hear you, how will I change? I've done that. Is this enough to engage them in the conversation, or is it the beginning?
I think it's the beginning. Hold on. Ellen, sweetheart, I'm doing
the thing won't work.
Not now.
The thing won't work.
Do you want to say hi? Come here and say hi.
Sure.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi. Yeah, we're doing go with.
Why?
We're doing this for her.
Yeah,
Battery.
right.
This is your, was it the CNN moment where the kid
Yeah,
went?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Except I need Tom like scuttling into the room and scooping her up and running away, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So I don't remember the question.
That's okay. We're talking about the hashtags for men, and you know, there's been positive, negative. Let's talk about the positive first.
Okay. Yeah.
I hear you. How I will change. I've done that. You know, it's interesting that men want to be a part of the conversation. They've chosen their own hashtag for that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of men have been using the Me Too hashtag, right? Because gendered violence doesn't only happen to women. So toxic masculinity really squashes men's feelings first, right? And I mean, Bell Hooks has written about this, about like the first step in patriarchy is not destroying women's souls, it's destroying men's souls, right? So that men sort of become dehumanized to the extent that they don't see women as real people, right? And so when men are using the hashtag to say Me Too, it's sort of like, oh, I see, like this happens to a wide range of people. The I hear you hashtag is great. And you got to keep it short, right? You got to, I hear you, not I hear you, but now I'm going to make a speech about how woke I am, right? Like, cause that is also performative feminism is not what I need right now. Like what I need is when you're in a group of dudes and some dude goes like, look at that ass, right? Is that you say, dude, like not cool.
Yeah.
Right. So in social justice, there's this saying like, go get your people. Right. So, you know, you're thinking like, I'm a dude and I'm really upset by all this stuff happening to women and I really want to help. What should I do for the women? And like, no, right. You don't do anything for the women. You go take care of your people, and your people are other men. Right. So you need to be a better man among men. And that's like probably the best way that men can help make the situation better for women.
Yeah. Rockin'. Well, so let's also talk about the criticism, because as anything online, we get the negative comments. You know, there was a hashtag, not all men, which we were joking, makes us roll our eyes. But, you know, we pulled some of the quotes. Dear women, please find some better ways to seek attention.
Right.
Like men doesn't portray you as being strong. You know, that was one in many that we saw online.
Thanks for your input, dude. Right?
Yeah, I guess that's probably as much as we should say about that. Yeah. All right, let's move on then. But let's talk about some of the women who have criticized as well. Yeah. So good old Blossom came out, and she did a little bit of talk about how she dresses modestly and she doesn't act flirtatious with men. So, you know, what do you make of her comments?
Well, she says that she's moved through this industry largely free of gender-based violence. And she attributes that to not being conventionally beautiful in the Hollywood sense. And she attributes that to her own deportment and comportment in the world. So when she says that the solution to gender-based violence is to not be very pretty and to dress more modestly and to be dignified, what she's saying is if you are pretty, it's your fault, right? Mm-hmm. If you are dressed not modestly, it's your fault, right? And if you act without dignity, it's your fault. When again, so she's sort of saying by not being sexually attractive or acting flirtatiously, I'm not subject to sexual violence. Again, as though it's based in sexual attraction, which it isn't. It's based in power, right? So Mayim Bialik has some powerful advantages, one of which is like strong parents and a good agent who do not leave her alone with dangerous men, right? Who train her in a very particular kind of assertiveness that not all women had access to as children, right? Not all women are as secure in themselves or as powerful or come from middle-class backgrounds where they feel a little bit more freedom in how they act. Sarah Polley too, right, was sort of like, I don't care that much about being an actress, right? This is why I could turn him down. And a lot of the other women are like, I did really care about being an actress, right? Yeah. I needed this in my life. So it comes down to power, right? And when Bialik says she's not assaulted because she dresses modestly and is not that pretty, it's sort of saying that if you are not that pretty, it's not possible for you to have been assaulted, right? So that means it's harder to believe women, you know, so often fat women hear, well, you know, you can't have been assaulted because like you're too ugly for anybody to assault, as if like that's what it's about, right? Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't help survivors who look like her to feel that they are believed when they speak.
An amazing answer. I think. Is there anything else you want to add in this conversation? I have one last question, and that's do you think that these high profile stories, if they didn't exist, so we had, the Bill Cosby, we've talked about some of the big high profile stories, would we be here today discussing sexual violence against women? Do you think, is that that has to happen?
Well, so we're talking a lot about Me Too as though it's something that just happened, right? And actually it's a hashtag and a movement that's been going for about 10 years. And it was started by a woman of color, Tarana Burke, who was trying to get something informal off the ground for women in underserved metropolitan areas, places where there weren't crisis counseling centers, right? Places where people don't have a lot of money for therapy. It was a kind of like on the ground self-love movement for people who had suffered sexual violence, right? We didn't hear too much about that, right? We're going to hear a lot more about sexual violence when it's like a rich white guy doing it to beautiful white women, right? And so the hashtag takes off a lot more when powerful people are promoting it, right? So I think all of this,
that every time I've read anything that you've talked about in the last week around Me Too, you always bring up her name. So way to get back to it. So good job for you. But anyway,
keeping it real. But I mean, what's going to make it blow up to a CBC News level or a New York Times level is going to be either a major court case or very photogenic people or very powerful people, right? That's what's going to bring it up. And then I think the rest of us have to hitch our wagons to that star and say, not just in Hollywood, right? But also in education, also in journalism and also in the elementary school system, right? So when these news stories get big and there's a lot of attention, that's where we can also really say, Me Too.
Mm-hmm. So what's your advice to Canadian women? What do we do next week?
Well, next week, we just keep on being awesome the way that we're already awesome. And if, anybody wants to have a conversation with you about that, know that your own sort of history of sexual harassment and assault is your history, and you don't have to share it to convince anybody about anything. So in many ways, this conversation can be very triggering for people who have suffered sexual violence. A lot of people are saying that it's very difficult for them this week because memories that they've been working very hard to suppress in their lives are brought viscerally to the surface. So some people are at a stage in their healing where they're okay, and it's empowering for them to talk about it. But other people have been kind of holding this really close to their hearts for a long time in ways that feel really spiky when you open that up and they're not ready. So I would say you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, right? Lots of people will. But if you are willing to talk about it with people, start with the people closest to you, right? Insist that they see the things that you see and insist that they take part in being part of that solution.
Thanks, Aimée.
You're welcome, Melissa.
Rockstar Aimée Morrison, UW, you're amazing. And thanks for being on our first podcast.
No problem.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So amazing. Thanks for everyone who tuned in and listened to our first comment. So you are more than welcome and encouraged to leave your comments. We'd love to hear about them. I wanted to read the Women's March Canada podcast, Women's March Canada mission statement, because I think it's so important. And it's that we stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country. That is the Women's March podcast. Good day.